Great. So we just finished off coding the header area with the logo and the navigation. And now what we're going to do is take a look at this hero section. So one of the issues I have is in this design, I have text that goes over top of an image. If I normally just add an image into the HTML, I'll have to do some fancy coding with Z-index to create some layered div tags to get text on top of each other, text on top of images, images on top of images. So what I want to do is I just want to create this really simple right now. I'm going to export this image, the hero image, as a background image, using it in CSS to place this image into the HTML. So this is a background image, meaning that I can put this text on top of the image inside the div box. So I'm going to create a section for the hero area, and I'm going to create a div box for this key message area here. So one of the first things I need to do is in Photoshop CC 2018, one of the great things is I can go to the hero layers. So I've got the layer group for hero, find the hero image, select that image, and I can right click on that layer and I can choose export as. So when I right click on the layer and choose export as, it brings up the export options in Photoshop. And it's beautiful because we've already designed this for the web. We've got the right width, right height. I can see already here it's sushi, it's a JPEG image. It's 1000 pixels wide and 473 pixels tall. So I just have to remember those dimensions to begin with. By default, it's going to give me this image at 100% quality. I'm going to decrease the quality of the image from 100% to 60%. And what that'll do is it'll take the image that's currently at 244.4 kilobytes and it'll decrease the size, and yet the quality of the image will stay the same. This means that it'll download faster and make my sites seem quicker, peppier, faster. So changing it to 60%, I now drop to 66.7 kilobytes. Fantastic. Great. JPEG 60%. Export all. When I click export all, it's going to take this image from this layer and it's going to export that into the same folder as my Photoshop file. Or I'm going to take it and change that location and put it inside my images folder. And I'm simply going to call this the background dash hero. So I can have all of my background images displayed in alphabetical order, background dash, and where this goes. So this is going to be the main hero image. I'm just going to call it background-hero.jpg and export. And that exported quickly. Great. If I go to the desktop, I can go into my Ozio folder and double check everything is there. And I'm sure that in the images folder, I have a background-hero.jpg. Great. So I've got the asset that I need for that. Back into brackets, I'm going to go to my HTML file, and just like before, I'm going to create the content in HTML and then style it using CSS. This hero image takes place after the header section, so I can see by clicking in the header, highlights it in green in brackets. It also highlights the closing tag in green. So I want to create this hero area below the header. And this is going to be in a section, because I tend to think of sections as like layers of a cake, and this is kind of like the hero layer. Section, it's going to have an ID. It only happens once on the page, and it's going to be called hero. Great. Now the first thing I'm going to do is make sure this section has the image in it as a background image. So I have to define hero inside the CSS style sheet. So I can have multiple sections, in each section to be identified uniquely. I added an ID, and it's called hero. So back in my style.css file, scrolling down near the bottom, I'm going to create a hashtag because it's an ID, and type in the word hero. Great. Hero is a box. I already know that the width of the box will be 1000 pixels because it matches the width of the header area and the width of my website. The height of the image is 473 if I remember correctly, and everything's in pixels. And I want to make sure I add a float. I'm going to float this to the left of the wrapper, and I also want to make sure that there are no boxes to the left or right, so I'm going to add a clear. And we're going to clear both left and right. So that's started to create the hero image. Next, I need to add a background. So I can choose the property background image, and I want to make sure I have the URL, or Uniform Resource Locator. So URL for this, and inside the curved brackets is where I can locate that image. Currently, the CSS file is in the CSS folder. I need to go back out of that folder and into the images folder. And the way we do that is, back in the old days of DOS, we used to have coding that would say ... and that would take us out of the current folder, back one folder, and now I can see the images folder. Going down to the images folder, I can see that inside that we have the background-hero. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. I also want to make sure that as a background image, because it's not a repeating pattern or a tile, I want to make sure that this does not repeat. So I can start typing in the background-repeat. And the option that I want for this, the value is no repeat. Great. So I've got the hero, width, height, float, clear, link to the image, telling it not to repeat. Save that file and go check and see what it looks like in the web browser. Fantastic. So now I have this section for the hero area, and the background image is already placed in there. I'm going to go back to the index.html file, and inside that file, inside the section of hero, I can start to create a new dividing area with an ID of key message. And this is where the key message is going to go. We've already done a heading 1, so I can't do a heading 1 anymore for text. Google strongly recommends you only have one H1 per page. So I'm going to go back inside Photoshop, and I'm going to grab the text. I'm going to grab Japanese fusion cuisine, copy that, and I'm going to create a heading 2 area. I also notice that there's text below that, authentic and traditionally inspired Japanese dishes. I'm going to highlight that text, copy and paste into HTML as well. This time I'm going to put it inside a heading 3 tag. And I've got one more element that looks like a button that has text, so I'm going to copy the text and paste it into this paragraph tag as well. In case you're curious, normally when red appears inside brackets, it tells you that there's an error with the coding, and the ampersand starts out special characters for HTML. And in this case, if I want to make this correct, an ampersand should be ampersand AMP semicolon, and that's HTML's coding for what an ampersand should look like. It will display fine if you just leave the ampersand at this point in time. However, this is the correct way of doing it. All right, if I save this key message div and take a look at what it looks like in the web browser currently, you can start to see, if I highlight the text, what it looks like here. We need to add the font, we need to add colors, we need to style it, and we need to move this div box around and push it down a little bit. So that's what we're going to try and do next. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rule for key message. So key message, I'm going to go back in my style.css. It's an ID. So I need to start this rule with a hashtag key message. Open the curly brackets, and again, this is a box. I'm going to have a width, and the maximum width I'm going to choose for this box will be 500 pixels. I may change the width of that as we go along, but I know it's not going to be 1,000. The height of this box, I'm just guessing at this point in time, I'm going to call it 400 pixels and see if that's enough height. And I definitely want to float this to the left. Great. I'm going to add a background dash color to this because I just want to see where it is. I can choose any color. I'm going to choose antique white for right now, and I'll delete that once I've positioned this box where I want it to be. Switching back to the web browser, I can see the width and the height of this box and where the text is, so I can start to push it around a little bit more. According to the Photoshop design, it needs to come in just a little bit from the left edge. It needs to come down and align with this portion of the image. So I'm just going to push this box down. I'm going to decrease the height of this and get it to a position where I think it's going to be acceptable. So I'll definitely take down the height to be 200, and I can start to move this box around by using margin. So I'm going to margin and put the 4 values in here. Again, the 4 values, if you're looking for what they are, it's top, right, bottom, left. So I'll push it from the left, and maybe I'll do 10 pixels just like I did at the top with the logo. And when I do that, it pushes the text in just a little bit, and I'm good with that. I want to push it down from the top now, so I need to change the first variable. And I'm just going to guess here at 100 pixels and see how that works. Not too bad. I'm going to try 150 and see if that works better. Really close. All right, so that's good enough for what we're doing right now. I want to get rid of the antique white background color because I don't think I need that anymore. And that's what it looks like. Now I can start to style the text. So I'm going to start with the heading 2, move to the heading 3, and then move to this button. So for the heading 2, again, just like we did with the navigation, I'm going to make sure that inside the key message space, where there's a heading 2, I'm going to define the font in here. So this frees me up to use heading 2 in other areas as well. This just identifies what the key message heading 2 looks like. Back in Photoshop, I'm going to highlight Japanese, and I see that it's in Titanium Web Regular, and it's 36 point. So I'm going to find the Titanium Web font family, which is up at the top. I'm going to copy that, scroll all the way back down to key message, and paste. I now have the font family. I now need to type in the font size. And the font size is, again, 36 points. So I'm going to choose 36 pixels for this one. I'm going to add the font weight just to make sure that we've set it to regular. And the font weight, I know from scrolling back up to the top here, the weight I'm looking for is 400. So I'm going to come down and add the font weight of 400. I know that the color is going to be white. All right, the text is also in uppercase. So just like before, I'm going to add a text dash transform and make sure that this text is uppercase. And I'm going to just preview that in the web browser and see what it looks like. All right. I can see what it looks like now already. Great, so it's starting to come along. Next, I'm going to choose the authentic and traditionally inspired Japanese dishes. So to define that, I know back inside here that it's in the key message, and instead of being a heading 2, it's going to be a heading 3, so H3. Open the curly brackets, and I'm going to double check in Photoshop to make sure I'm following the design correctly. And again, it's Titanium Web Regular 18 point. So I can start to copy and paste some of the properties and values from heading 2 into heading 3 just to speed this up. I know the color needs to be white. I don't believe this is uppercase, and it's not. It's capitalized. So I can make sure that I change this to be capitalized. Believe the font weight or font size is 18. Change the transform from uppercase to capitalize. Save. And I think we've got the starting of that. Great. By default, heading 3s and heading 2s are going to be bold. That's why it's important to set a font weight. All right. So it's starting to come along. If I look at the font weight again here from the design, the font weight in the Photoshop design actually looks thinner than what it does inside the web browser. So I can go back to Google Fonts and I can actually choose a thinner font. I believe that there was actually a weight of 200. So I'm just going to add 200 up here. And I'm going to try and change it down here and see if I can change this quickly on the fly. Changing both the heading 2 and the heading 3 to 200. And when I preview it again, that looks a little bit more true to the actual design. Great. And I want to just change the height of things. Great. Good. Back in Photoshop, I just have to start to work on this paragraph tag. And the text here is Titanium Web Bold, and it's 10 point. So again, I can come back in, and I know that in the HTML file, inside the key message, we've done the styling for the heading 2 and the heading 3, and I just need to do a style for this paragraph tag. So the same thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to copy the entire heading 3 rule, and I'm going to paste it below. And I'm going to change the heading 3 from what I've pasted to be the paragraph tag. I know that it's Titanium Web again in here. I know it's bold and 10 points. So Titanium Web, 10. And I'm going to put 400 and see how that works. It's capitalized, or it's uppercase, not capitalized. So I need to make sure that I add that. And I'm just going to copy and paste the text transform that's uppercase here. And we'll start to see how this looks in the web browser. All right, so this is starting to work a little bit. I want to push this paragraph text away from this heading 3 a little bit more. So I'm simply going to go back into the paragraph text, and I'm going to add some margin to the top, and maybe I'll add just 10 pixels again. All right, so we're starting to push things around, so it starts to feel a little bit more, more like the design. Some things you're probably looking at is great. The text Try Our New Fall Specialties also has a red background with slightly rounded corners and a white border. So how do we add that? And we can add that in the paragraph tag as well. So I can come back into brackets, and I can start to change some of the background here, and I can say background color. I'm going to put red for right now, but I'm going to go back into Photoshop and steal the exact color of red that we're looking for. So inside Photoshop with the eyedropper tool, I can click the red button and go to my foreground color. I can tell you that it's actually this hexadecimal number A31C1A. Thankfully, I can copy from Photoshop and paste with a hashtag in front, the number sign, and now that's the exact color from the web, or from the Photoshop design that I can apply to the web. If I scroll back to my web browser, I can start to see, oh, okay, great. You'll notice that this red bar goes all the way across. We'll go into more detail next semester, but this is a block element. I can tell it's a block element because it goes across the entire width of what we have. So I need to change the display of that. So I can go back in and say, great, I'm going to change the display. And instead of being display as a block, I want this to display inline. And by using this display inline, I can come back into the web browser and I see that the red covers the exact width of that text. All right, I want to work a little bit more with this. And so I'm going to add some padding, which again will add some space between the edge of the border, or between the edge of the element and the text. And I'll add the 4 zeros again, which is the exact same as the margin where the first 0 is top, the next is right, bottom, and left. I want to add similar padding to the top and to the bottom, and if I throw in 5 pixels for the top, I can throw in 5 pixels for the bottom. Generally, we create a larger left and right spacing. So I'm going to try 7 pixels to the right and 7 pixels to the left. Just visually, it tends to work a little bit better that way. And there it is. It's up a little high, so I'm going to again change the margin from the top. Instead of 10 pixels, let's try 20, and this will just start to work with how we view things. Great. See if I can get to move. It's not moving just yet, which means I probably have to go and change the margin bottom for the heading 2. We'll worry about that in a second. So I've got display inline. The two other things I need to do to this red background paragraph is I need to add rounded corners, and to do this I need to add a border option, and in this case it's border radius. So border dash radius, and I'm going to say 3 pixels for the radius, and that's going to go all the way around, and we'll see how that looks inside the web browser. Not too bad. Maybe I want to increase it a little bit, but again, they're just values and you can change that whenever you like. Great. I now also want to add the border to this element, and it's going to be 1 pixel. It's going to be a solid border, and it's going to be a color of white. So once I've added the border, I can check and see in the web browser and see what it looks like. Okay, great. Now it's really starting to take shape and look a lot more like the design that we have in Photoshop. Let me see if I can move, add space in between authentic and traditionally inspired Japanese dishes, the heading 3 and the paragraph tag. So again, I'm going to come up to the heading 3. I'm going to try and add a margin dash bottom, and I'll add 20 pixels, see what that does. All right, by adding the margin bottom here, I've added a lot more space, too much. So I want to go back and just change that to maybe 10 again and save. Not too bad. If I want to decrease the space here between the heading 2 and the heading 3, again, I can go back and say, great, margin dash top. Right now it's 0, so I'm going to have to add a minus. I'm just going to add a minus 10 pixels right now and see how that looks. Not too bad. Great. So this is starting to really come along. And I think we pretty much got this key message, heading 2, heading 3, paragraph tag, all working beautifully, and the hero section looks like it's coming along. Great. Next, what I want to take a look at is inside Photoshop, taking a look at this featured section by creating a section for the featured area and 3 dividing areas, a dividing area for seasonal soups, savory sushi, and undeniable uwa. Thank you.